Well, for more on the issues facing Parliament in its first week back, I'm joined now from the foyer of the House of Commons by three MPs. Erin O'Toole is the Conservative MP for Durham and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade. Peter Julian is the NDP House Leader, and Kevin Lamoureux is the Liberals Deputy House Leader. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, all three of you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
If we can start, Erin O'Toole, can we start with the Iraq mission? We are now in a new mission, a deployment to Iraq. A lot of people and the opposition parties were asking this week, and we had even an emergency debate on it this week, but a lot of people are still asking the question, what exactly is the nature of this new Canadian deployment, and does it have a set time period? Is it going to be over in 30 days, as the Prime Minister seemed to suggest?
Well, the Prime Minister has been very clear on this, Martin. We have advisors on the ground, between 60 and 75, I think, right now, in an advisory capacity alongside our allies, and that will be reviewed in 30 to 60 days. I think what we've seen this week is the fact that the opposition parties, the Liberals held a debate, no one showed. The NDP don't understand what a military deployment is. So there's been a number of military deployments. When the DART, the Disaster Assistance Response Team, deploys to countries to help after earthquakes and events like that, we don't have a debate in the House of Commons. We don't have a debate when a ship deploys with a NATO fleet. What the Prime Minister has said is if in the future this turns into a combat mission of some sort, or that our allies are asking us to do more than just this advisory role, that's when we have a debate. You see, this is the issue. A deployment, the military deploys all the time, and that's part of the executive power of the government. But the Prime Minister has been clear. If there's going to be a major deployment in a combat role, troops on the ground, boots on the ground, that sort of thing, we'll have a debate in the House of Commons. But I'd ask the NDP, they haven't asked for a debate with the deployment of DART, the deployment of ships, the deployment of aircraft. So they've really got to understand military operations.
Peter Julian, your problem or your questions concerning this new role and new deployment in Iraq?
Well, we've asked a whole range of questions and really haven't gotten any answers back from the government at all. I think it was interesting, Tom Mulcair's speech was very memorable in the House on Tuesday night. He was the only national leader to actually speak on the issue of the military mission in Iraq, and he quoted the Prime Minister, who used to say, when he was in opposition, that these types of missions should be subject to a debate and to a vote in Parliament. Now, of course, he's completely changed his tune, and the Conservatives have talking points that say, well, you know, these aren't boots on the ground. And what Tom Mulcair said was, well, are they wearing sandals? Are they levitating? How can you say that there are no boots on the ground when we have Canadian soldiers in Iraq that are in the process of a military mission? And so that's the kind of debate that we've been looking to provoke. We believe there needs to be a vote, that's showing respect to our military and showing respect to the Canadian public, so that we really understand what the parameters are of this mission. It's not clear at all, and we're concerned about mission creep, quite frankly, because that's been the history of this government.
On the issue of a vote, though, the point has been made, Erin O'Toole made it, but also as journalists we went back and looked, and the initial vote that was introduced by the Prime Minister was on Afghanistan, which was a combat mission, but no sooner had we had that vote than we had deployments like Haiti, the DART and other Canadian forces sent to Haiti after the earthquake there, and there was no vote on that, and there was no parliamentary debate on that. What do you take from it when the Prime Minister and Erin O'Toole seem to be saying if there's going to be a change, we will have a vote on it?
Disaster relief is quite different from being in a military mission that is part of combats that are taking place right now. And so to say, well, emergency relief is somehow equivalent would be disingenuous, of course.
Okay.
We've also said that humanitarian relief is critically important. There are people dying every day in the streets of northern Iraq, and Canada can play a key role there in providing humanitarian support, food and water, so that those individuals are not dying.
Okay, Kevin Lamoureux.
I think it's important, Martin, that we do look at what Peter just finished saying. Humanitarian aid is an absolute must, and no one questions that whatsoever. We had that debate because the foreign affairs critic for the Liberal Party actually brought in the emergency debate, because we have been calling for that debate to be occurring. We want more transparency coming from the government. We recognize that there's a difference in terms of when you deploy Canadian military personnel for DART to the Philippines for a typhoon disaster versus sending in military personnel to Iraq. totally different. The government knows at the end of the day what we're looking for is to get that, build that consensus, have that debate in Parliament, so that this way the views and opinions of Canadians can be heard through their members of Parliament. And it was nice to be able to see that debate occur on Monday, and that was because Mr. Garneau, on behalf of the Liberal Party, introduced the debate in the first place. Canada does have a role to play in international affairs. We need to recognize that. We need to know that when other nations go and recognize that terrorism is destructive to society as a whole, that it's irresponsible for Canada just to do nothing. But it's irresponsible for the Prime Minister not to allow for the debate to occur inside the House of Commons, and he should be encouraging it and needs to be more transparent in terms of what it is our forces is actually doing.
Okay, Aaron, too, I guess the question is, and I alluded to it in my question to you, and that is, do we know, though, where this mission is going? The Obama administration has said that they estimate that it could take up to 3 years to, they say, destroy ISIL, the Islamic militant group. They say that it could be a 3-year mission. The Prime Minister at the NATO summit said, well, for now it's going to be 30 days with a possibility of some changes. Can you tell Canadians where the mission is going?
Well, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Martin, said just this week that the primary focus of troops on the ground will be troops that are already on the ground, domestic troops, both in terms of Iraqi and then some of the minority groups. What Canada has done in response to our allies requiring or asking for our support has said that we will help advise, and that is not a combat role. We're helping those countries with their defense. What the Prime Minister has said is if that changes, we will have a debate. The deployment question is an interesting one. You know, Kevin was in the military, so was I. The Canadian forces deploy all the time, and it's not just disaster. We have HMCS Toronto in the Black Sea right now. We saw the ship was buzzed by a Russian aircraft. That's a deployment. It doesn't seem like Mr. Mulcair even understands what deployments are. We have said as a government, before a combat mission like Afghanistan, our men and women served 12 years in that country, we'd have a debate in this House. But if we have ships deploying with NATO, or we had Army troops exercising in Poland alongside their NATO allies, those are deployments that don't come to the House of Commons. And I think it's actually a ridiculous position that the NDP has been taking, and it shows that they don't understand military and defense issues.
Okay, I want to get to another topic, and that is the one thing that's been discussed a lot this week, and that is the nature of the return of the House. You're now in the fall sitting of this session. You're back. Parliament's back this week. There's been a lot of commentary on what to expect in terms of how this sitting is going to play itself out and how the next 13 months are going to play themselves out before the fixed date election. What should Canadians expect? I'll start with you, Aaron O'Toole. In terms of tone, in terms of what you're going to get done as a Parliament.
I think we're going to continue a lot of the major initiatives, Martin, that we have already underway. Certainly, I'm Parliamentary Secretary to Trade. I'm going to be watching our state visit with the President of South Korea this weekend and on Monday. We have our first free trade agreement with a country in Asia, South Korea, a country that our veterans 60 years ago helped liberate. So great leaping off point for more trade, more selling of our goods and services in Asia. That's been an ambitious program the Prime Minister's launched upon, and we're on track for balancing the budget, just as we've said, at the next budget early next year. So we're going to continue on that course. We want to see the budget balance, trade and job opportunities for Canadians, and then we really want to see, once we've met that target of balanced budget, and Canadians have helped us get there, to offer some comprehensive tax relief for families and seniors. This week, the Liberals said that they would actually raise taxes on seniors by undoing the pension income splitting that we already brought in several years ago. So I think you'll see a debate on what should the future of the country be like in terms of job creation, and we'd like to see tax relief.
Okay, Peter Julian, as a House Leader for the NDP, what kind of session, what kind of sitting should we expect?
Well, Aaron just had 2 rounds in a row, so I'm going to go back to his first point
Sure.
when he tried to condemn the NDP for quoting the Prime Minister's words back to him. And so what Aaron is doing, obviously, is trying to condemn what Stephen Harper said when he was in opposition. He's saying what Stephen Harper said in opposition simply was ill-informed, and now what he's saying as Prime Minister, I guess, is well-informed. It's a ridiculous position from this Conservative government, and I don't think it's spin that works at all with Canadians. As far as your second point is concerned, the second round with Aaron, this government is tired. We saw this today in the House. The NDP was able to take control of the House agenda today because not enough Conservatives showed up to work. And we put forward an extremely important debate on missing and murdered Indigenous women, something that the government consistently has refused to do, calling for a public inquiry into the murdered and missing Indigenous women. And we've been saying, and Tom Mulcair has said, within the first 100 days of an NDP government, we will put into place that public inquiry. The government has lost direction. I mean, it's not just that their members aren't showing up in the House. It's that they really don't seem to have any sort of agenda at all. So what we're doing, and what we'll be doing consistently over the next few months, is not only opposing bad measures that come from the government and trying to improve them when there is something in there that we can work on to improve, but also putting forward the NDP agenda. So Tom Mulcair has talked about restoring, after so many years of cuts in healthcare, restoring full healthcare funding, putting in place a national childcare program, of course, as well, putting in place a national minimum wage. So what we're doing is putting forward the agenda that Canadians will be considering in an election that starts in about 360 days.
Okay, last point to you, Kevin Lamoureux. What can we expect in this next session? I must bring up one thing. We're seeing a lot of attacks on your leader, Justin Trudeau. We're seeing attacks from both the NDP and from the Liberals. Is that something we should expect as well in this next session?
I'm going to anticipate that the NDP and the Conservatives will continue to work together to try to, point their guns at the Liberal Party, in particular our leader. From our perspective, what we need to recognize, and going forward into the session, is that we are not to lose focus. Mr. Trudeau has been very clear. He wants us to focus our attention on the middle class. We need to look at ways and initiatives that are going to make a difference so that the middle class in Canada is going to be able to prosper. By addressing the middle class issue, at the end of the day, that's going to help our economy. It's going to be able to deliver hope and jobs and so forth. So when we start talking about initiatives, the type of initiatives that Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal caucus are going to be talking about are things like what we talked about earlier this week when we talked about the EI reform. Why not allow employers the opportunity and provide them the incentive to hire more Canadians? So we came up with an idea at the same cost of what the Conservatives came up with about a week and a half ago, but I would ultimately argue is going to be more effective because it could generate the potential of 150,000 jobs as opposed to what the Conservatives are proposing, something that's putting a cap, and if anything, it might even discourage employers from hiring. So by engaging Canadians, dealing with the job market, trying to encourage the middle class growth is, I think, where we're going to hear a lot coming from the Liberal Party and Mr. Trudeau over the coming months as we anticipate an election in 2015.
Okay, well, on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up. We will have a chance over the next few weeks and months to speak again. I want to thank all three of you for taking the time.
Thanks very much. Martin. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.